This is the story of a book about a book. It started about 75 years ago in the course of World War II. The Office of Strategic Services, the predecessor of the CIA, was running the Western Allies resistance forces in Europe. They had actually created this true manual for how do you commit acts of sabotage, intentional sabotage. How do you throw oily rags on a corner and very surreptitiously drop a cigarette butt in it as you walk by? How do you rewire electrical devices so it will short circuit unexpectedly? How do you ruin machinery simply by changing a gear setting and those kinds of things? There's this unexpected section of the book that kind of just changes gears all of a sudden and begins to talk about what to do if you are in organizations, meetings, conferences, and offices. How do you commit acts of sabotage? And they give out a list of 8 rules that describe how those in those situations can truly be saboteurs. And the very first of them is insist on doing everything through channels. Never permit shortcuts to be taken in order to expedite decisions. The second, make speeches. Talk as frequently as possible and at great length. Illustrate your points by long anecdotes, lots of experiences. Don't hesitate to throw in appropriate patriotic comments at the same time to show you're one of the group. The third of them, when possible, refer all matters to committee for further study and consideration. Attempt to make the committees as large as possible, never less than 5. Bring up irrelevant issues as frequently as possible. Haggle over precise wordings of communications, minutes, and resolutions. 6, refer back to matters decided upon at the last meeting and attempt to reopen the question of the advisability of that decision. Do any of these things sound wrong or bad or inappropriate? Okay, so but what's so scary about them then? If you put them together collectively, what happens to your organization if you do all these 8 things?
You can't move forward.
You can't move forward, exactly. You are stuck. So we have the original Simple Sabotage Field Manual written in the 40s, declassified in the 70s, and now we have modern simple sabotage that says these things are actually occurring in organizations when we don't want sabotage to happen, whether it's intentional sabotage here or the unwitting sabotage that we see in our organizations today. How do we really search out those areas of sabotage behavior, because they are there? I think there are a couple things that organizations can actually do to help locate sabotage behaviors. And I think it's one of the areas where it's really, really not that difficult to engage in. And that is to make sure that people are using something along the lines of a decision rights matrix. And there are lots of variations on these things. The one I happen to like is called make, ratify, inform, notify. Who has the decision right? Whose decision is this to make? Usually a single person. Do they have to get someone's approval? And that's a ratification, which is if they will say, look, we want to bring in red 2000, they get a yes or a no, not I want the green 2000. Otherwise, they're not the ratifier, they're making that decision. So make, ratify, inform. Who do we have to let know first we're about to do something? Because if we go back to what people view as the most important thing, asset to have in the organization, it's information. Who do we have to let know first that we're about to make a decision? Who do we have to include in the decision process? Because how many of you have heard, why wasn't I included in this process? Okay, and that's a different question from why wasn't I informed? And that gets us into notify. Sometimes, unless it's a public matter, can we reveal to certain individuals in the organization that, hey, there's something else coming down the pike. We wanted you to know about it first. So they're not sandbagged by their organization when it says, hey, did you know about this? And they didn't, and they're discovering it from somebody who reads their emails before they did. That's not a good result. How many of you have done initiative reviews in your organization to do the inventory of initiatives? Some of you have. What'd you find?
Usually we have too many.
Usually we have too many. They conflict. Say again?
Redundant.
They're redundant. My goodness, you're actually working on that too? We got a whole workforce working on that, or a whole little initiatives group working on that. So that's the first thing I want to at least encourage, initiatives reviews. But I really want to make a plea for the introduction of 1, maybe 2 new questions in your engagement or your opinion surveys of your employee group. And here it is. What is our stupidest rule or process? What's our stupidest rule or process? You want to be a little more genteel? Phrase it the other way. If you could rewrite one of our rules or processes, what would it be? Do you think if you were to ask that question, particularly if you're frontline folks, they would at least have some thought other than, they're all stupid, which I don't think you can hear as much. Do you think you might just have a couple who say, we do things a certain way and we're doing it that way for historical purposes? I want to give you one other tool, which is really one that you may want to think about. How many of you in your organizations have something along the lines of a new employee orientation, either in person or online or video or some combination or something like that? When was the last time you had an experienced person sit through it? Because if an experienced person sits through it, they're going to be able to look at that with some perspective and say, are we still saying that? Or are we still telling new people that this is how we behave? No organization is sabotage-free. See where it's happening in terms of places or patterns or people. Don't make this a witch hunt. This is about sabotage behaviors, not saboteurs. What our real goal here is not to go overboard. So don't give up the fight. Move forward and fight sabotage wherever it may be. Thanks.